the camera. I gotta do what you're doing. I look over there. But dang, you can see my child photo there.
That's all right. That's super clear.
All
Well,
right, cool.
well, welcome, Andrew. We are officially live, and to all those that are tuning in or that are going to be watching this afterwards, welcome to the Wednesday wind down, the whiskey wind down.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for having me. It is an honor,
Absolutely.
sir.
Well, my name is McShan with eXp Realty, and today I'm bringing on Andrew as well. He's a loan officer. I'm a real estate agent, and ideally, we would like to just have some open and honest, candid conversations as far as what's going on in the market, and also what are some thoughts and opinions. Again, thoughts and opinions, but also some educational value from real estate professionals that are very familiar with the process on different sides. So I think it's always helpful to in one aspect, understand the role in which your agent plays in your transaction, as well as the role in which your lender, your loan officer, your mortgage broker, which is also not your financial planner or your financial advisor. So we could talk about all of that, but ultimately this is our space to just have some quick chatter about what's going on in real estate.
Open and honest, of course.
Open and honest.
Cheers.
Cheers. So first and foremost, Andrew, the most common question or the most common concern that I feel like I'm noticing now is that rates are going up. Does that mean that we're about to have a crash because it's a housing bubble and everything is overinflated? What are your thoughts?
Yes, market's crashing. Invest in crypto. Sell everything. no, no, I'm just kidding. So the thing that everybody goes back to is the big wigs or the people that have been doing this 20 plus years say, well, when I bought my house, I got it at 11% interest rate, right? Well, yeah, your house was also worth, $45,000. It's a little bit different now, but yes, even with rising interest rates, right? People are you're so keen on being able to borrow on a personal loan, auto loan, credit card, at anything in the double digits, right? But you could still get a home in the single digits. It's still very worth it. We can, later on we're going to talk about the equity in your home and what you're paying now versus gaining later. The interest rates shouldn't determine whether you are a homeowner or not, right? It should be something that goes into budgeting, right? Type of thing. You always have the ability to refinance later. Guess what? If you ultimately can't afford the house down the road, you can always sell it, right? Like there's a lot of outs that you have. But people shouldn't be scared of the rising interest rates. The people that are scared, the people that are taken aback by it, were the people that were buying new homes, right? The people that were maxing out. This is the problem. The people that were maxing out their budget to buy a new build and were not locked, right? We'll talk about that later. That were not locked with their interest rate. Their payments went from whatever it was, $1,300 to now $1,700, right? People are saying inflation is 8%. Well, I could disagree and say it's actually higher. It's actually 18% because of the amount of your housing payment went up, right?
And that's typically the largest expense for so many people.
For basically everybody, right? For 99% of the people out there, right? Exactly. And so what it's those people, yes, because they've already put an earnest money deposit down, right? They've already put the $25,000, $5,000, $10,000 earnest money deposit down that the builder wants, right? To show that you're good for the house. And then now their payment went from, again, if these are conventional or FHA borrowers, right? People that are borrowing money for the first time that don't have established credit, that has serious impact. So yes, absolutely. Does it rising interest rates cause concern? Absolutely. But are there other ways around it? Also, absolutely. Right. But for that person that's maxing out their budget, that's why mortgage loans have ratios, right? Like that's how you get qualified. But again, and it's also knowing the right product too, right? If you went to any of the big name banks and they only have the one product for that specific type of thing, and your interest rate goes up, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, it is what it is." Well, they got to seek out other financial professionals to accommodate that task, right? What happens if a doctor says, "Oh, sorry, it's cancer, can't do anything," right? You're gonna stop with that doctor? No, you gotta get a second opinion. So, that's just kind of in a nutshell, but long way of saying, rising interest rates, should people be concerned? Sure, you could be, but honestly, again, that should already be factored into your budget, right? People had to realize at some point, inflation or things
Yeah,
were gonna.
we weren't gonna be in the twos and threes forever because we had a good little run in the twos and threes. The twos and threes were a glorious time. I bought an investment property around that time, so it was definitely great timing. But it definitely impacts affordability.
Absolutely. And then in close, just on that subject, I would just say, as long as you're budgeting appropriately, is the inventory less? Sure. But, that's where somebody like you is going to advise your client the best. And as far as I go, is like, hey, if you really want that house, like, you got to lock, right? What it did was gave a lot of people so much security, right? With low interest, it gave them so much security that they weren't taking the other precautions in place, which were
got
finding
sloppy.
somebody. Simply finding a lender that can lock your loan for 6 months, right? And and if you did, you had nothing to worry about. Rates went up started going up in January. We're April, so that means people in November and December, January still had the ability to lock in. So now it's going to be the same thing 6 months from now when rates are 6-7%. It's the same story now. So that's where we're at. So thank you.
Oh, good. So I think it's a couple of gems I want to emphasize from that. Just even me picking up on the agent side is one, when you're focusing on new construction, make sure you explore options to lock your interest rates because that can impact, what your monthly payment and so forth will be. And I think for many people, and I often go back and forth, and I would be the same way because I'm pretty frugal in most aspects of my life. But some folks will be so focused on not locking in a rate because they are so focused on getting the cheapest rate. And I want you to you can give it a little time and try to strike while the iron is hot. But for me, I typically tell clients the benefit is more of grander scheme of things for us locking in affordability. So at this point, what your payment would be at a purchase price of this and this interest rate. Yes, rates may go down, but then you're locked, and it's kind of like, hey, you can't have everything. You can't have the full world. But also, if they go up, you would also be protected. So it's one of those. So it's one of those where you just take that as a benefit of hey, this is cool. This is where the rates were when I locked, and I know for sure I'm comfortable with this payment. I'm financially in a place to where this payment makes sense. Which is another piece as far as just thinking about affordability, which I think is going to be one of the big things. Even when people, at least in my opinion, are like, oh, when is the market going to crash or everything has to correct? Now, I absolutely feel as though we're going to start seeing some appreciation gains start to slow because we've been going real drastic. Because ultimately, the more expensive the homes get, not everybody in America makes that much to afford the home. So that's when you start to have less buyers, and that is actually what makes a seller's market a buyer's market because who's going to buy the house? So you can have $1 million house, and comps may support it. But if you don't have $1 million buyer right now, that's gonna ready to buy your house and wants to buy your house and is willing and able and qualifies to, then you can't sell it for $1 million. So that's where we start to see some aspects of prices kind of leveling off a little bit, but we still don't have inventory and everybody needs shelter. And I think that's my typical piece on the agent side, because just being fully transparent, there have been people that have been saying 2019, oh, it's not the right time to buy, the market's going to crash. 2020, same story. 2021, same story. Meanwhile, I have sellers that bought in 2019, 2020, but they also really experienced some of the major appreciation growths. Because this isn't expected forever. So if you're a homeowner, I mean, you can be raking it in with equity. We could talk about different ways that you can utilize and leverage your equity in a moment. But that, you can't expect that to go on forever. However, you can benefit from already kind of gaining those gains in the time that you were the owner versus being on the sidelines. So it's one of those to where, are you financially ready, in my opinion? It's not necessarily what's the rate? Is it the right time? It's no. Do you have savings? Are you prepared to cover expenses for 3, 6, 9 months, depending on what's your goals, your family structure? Do you have some nest egg pieces where you could afford a repair if you needed to make a repair on the home, or taxes increase on you? Are you maxed out on your budget already? So as long as you're checking the boxes on the financial readiness, like you mentioned, I think the home ownership process shouldn't be one of those to where you're gonna look into this magic 8 ball or glass and know like, oh, this is the most prime time to buy or the most prime time to sell. So we still need somewhere. Still need somewhere to live, and rent is going up. So you can either keep renting and pay more in rent every year, or buy.
Yeah. Last time I checked, the interest rate on renting was 100%, right? Because you're not getting any equity. So, and what people don't get, I'll add one little tidbit is there's a thing in lending called a renegotiation rate, right? Where if rates drop at least a quarter point from the rate that you locked in, you are allowed and actually have the right to renegotiate that rate. Right now, it doesn't mean when the rates go down 5 basis points, which is 0.5%, right? That's 5 basis points. 100 would be 1%. 5 would be 1/5 of a or 1/20th of a percentage point. You can renegotiate, right? So if you locked in at 4.25 today, you have a 90-day lock, right? And rates get better right before closing. Right. And now rates are 4% or 3.8, whatever. Guess what? You can get that rate. You never lose. You can't lose. Right. You can't. Sure. Maybe you pay a small premium to cover. Right. That's what you get for the safety net. Right. So maybe your neighbor who gets 3.7, who has a 15-day lock. Sure. But you got a 3.8 and you did it 2 months ago. So you always had that security. Right. So that's something that people have. But, you have to consult the people. Right? How are you going to get seller credit if you don't ask? Right? People don't know seller credit exists. Well, how do But if you know it exists, find yourself a real estate agent that knows those things. You know those
absolutely, things. Especially because we're gonna walk that inspection down, or I'm gonna start typing up some things. Yeah. I'm gonna be like, oh, we noticed this. It's all in how you brief it. If it briefs well and you can make it make sense, not like, oh, the buyers want $7,000 in concessions. Like what? Yeah. There were a couple of issues. I'm more than happy to actually share the full report with you because then you're going to have to disclose everything on this report. However, the main pieces of concern are, and here's some quotes, here's some estimates, and let's just see what we can make happen. That is super valuable information. Well, another piece, I think, because I also want to be very valuable and attentive to both buyers that are interested in buying, folks that are thinking about selling, and current homeowners. And one of the most significant pieces that I feel like is happening now, or people are somewhat still exploring, are tapping into their equity, which you can also serve as an advisor. And this is why for this live, I really want to bring in like the mortgage lending side. Because see, Andrew was talking in them points and 0.5%. See, agent side, we don't even get that small. Cents are just about as small as we trying to go to, or 99.2%. So you start talking half a quarter of a quarter, 18th of a quarter. I'm like, okay, divide again. But I think the thing that is beneficial is thinking about equity and appreciation gains. So in a traditional market, I feel like most folks would say, the advisement would be hope to stay in your home for at least 5 years, or at least 3 to 5, to where if you're not going to stay in your home for at least 3 years, then it may not be wise to buy right now after you factor in closing costs and so forth, if and when you did want to sell. But in my opinion, the benefit of being an owner is that you have choice. And that's where I think it goes back to financial readiness. Because folks are like, well, if I'm stuck with the home and say prices start dropping, and it was like, well, if you're financially stable, then that wouldn't be the time to sell. That means don't sell. But if you're distressed, meaning like you need to sell because you need to, pull out some of your equity, or, you need to gain profits or get from underneath this mortgage commitment, then that's when I think things can be in a place to where it can be a challenge. Because otherwise you can rent it out, and rent has been steady going up everywhere. So it's like you can sell it, or you can keep it, or you can rent it out, or you can live in it. So at that point you kind of have options to where you can really choose. But the lending side is all about home equity options. So tell the people, because I'm even still learning myself as a homeowner, like different ways to leverage equity in my home. Because I feel like this is imaginary money until you sell it or tap into it.
Yeah. By the way, I get good at the way I got good at numbers is I never went outside. So that's what happens when you're a product of staying inside all the time. So
good.
See,
so anyway. Andrew stays on the numbers. I like pictures and stuff. So keep me in the houses. Show me granite. Show me windows.
Show me granite. Yes. Give me a calculator and a compass. I'll be okay. But so you bring up an interesting point. So I don't know if I could say this or if anyone's gonna hunt us down, but we were neighbors. We lived in the same.
Lake
complex.
Point.
Or Lake Point, yeah. Or is it still called Lake Point? Because I knew the new HOA went in and
Yeah, we're still Lake
changed.
Point. The
Okay, still Lake
terrace is
Point.
back there, so we're still Lake Point officially.
Okay, all right. So yeah, that's right, the terrace. So we were renting. Okay, you're in a military family. You guys you were able to purchase. We TCS'd there. My family TCS'd there.
Which is
And
temporary change of
temporary
station
change
for
of
those that
station.
are familiar. Temporary.
Yeah, and so the landlord, you obviously saw on the application I was a mortgage lender, so he pops in one day and says, Andrew, I noticed you do mortgage loans, so I have all of your information. It's only fair, there's a certain amount of trust there, so I refinanced one property in where we live. There's like 400 homes or something. So then
That's
he
awesome.
says, oh, didn't just have one; he had three in the area. So I refinanced three of the properties, all a little bit different than the other, right? 4.2, 5.3, whatever, in different square footage. And so check this out. So in 2018, all right, he bought two homes in 18, one in 19. Or it was
Ooh,
two.
that's great.
One in
Ooh,
18,
that's great time. And that was right for the market just went berserk.
Right. So, but three homes, right? And so this is how I'm going to answer your question by telling you the stories. Is that the properties, when he bought them in 18, he bought one for 144. He bought another one for 150 something, right? 160 maybe, and then he bought the third one, which was the most expensive one, a year later, because they were still in the different phases. But I think the most he spent was 188. Okay, and that's from one year to the next. When all three of his properties needed appraisals on them, right? You had, I think the cheapest, the not cheapest, but the lowest value that came in on all three homes, 286, 297, and I think it was like 315. It was just
And
a
that's in
smidge
less
over
than 2
300.
years.
Exactly, right. And so what he did was he cashed out on all three properties. On investment properties, you can go up to 75% loan to value. That means if the house was worth 100, you can take out 75. So he took out up to 75%. This borrower took out almost $100,000 worth of equity, right, between the three homes. Now what he does is he takes that money, right? Now remember, he has renters, right? This is where it comes in. He has renters that are paying the mortgage payment. I won't disclose what the payments were so people don't get offended, but we were paying a lot more than what the rent payment was. Or the rent payment was a lot more than what his mortgage payment was, okay? It was a lot.
Which is typically, that's why people own properties to rent. If that was the case, then you wouldn't have landlords.
Right. And so no one's knocking them. I'm just saying, living there a little bit skewed, but anyways, did the loans and used that $100,000, or it was probably more. I think it was probably more. It was like 50, 60 grand each loan. So we're probably closer to 200, right? Uses that money
to buy another
asset. And right, so essentially, you have this unlimited financial system where if the cycle keeps continuing, someone gives you money, and when you accumulate enough of it, you use it to buy something else that someone will give you money for, and it keeps going and going until it gets bigger. So tapping into your equity, right? You bought a house for 100, now it's worth 2. That's $100,000 you could cash out on, right? And you do it because you get to retain the property. Right, you get to still keep it, and then you're still making money from it. And then we could go down the rabbit hole about tax incentives and what it does to your,
So to clarify, when you cash out in a refinance, do you get taxed on those proceeds?
No. So great point. Great question. Is the when you take money out of your property, do it for whatever reason, right? Go to Vegas, put it all on red. It's a non-taxable event. By the way, not financial advice.
I'm finna say we're gonna not do this. See, this is where the real estate agent and the mortgage side, because we're doing the whiskey wind down. So clearly we're in the business of loans and homes. We're in the business of loans and homes. So I would absolutely sell you a home, but I would give you advice. But see, sometimes, but don't go putting your house on the market to go buy no crypto, and then the crypto go down, and then now you ain't got no crypto and you ain't got no house. And that is not the advice, but this is why I want to emphasize to folks that a financial planner or an advisor is not the same responsibility or duty as your real estate agent, as your mortgage officer. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You were talking about like you could pull out funds for whatever, but ultimately you don't get taxed on it, right?
If we're staying true to Dom's recommendations, right? Like you use that and you buy the next thing. Now it doesn't have to be a property, right? Or maybe you graduate from single family residences to duplex to triplex, whatever. Or maybe you get a whole apartment complex, right? People don't realize, even though I do residential lending, I don't do commercial lending. Two separate things. Or at least I'm not doing it right now. You have people that do both just fine. But what you do with that money is you use it to buy you something else. If we're staying
that would generate income.
That will generate income, and these people, the borrowers, they could retire right now, and they only had 4 or 5 homes. They can retire right now with the cost of living where we lived, right? They can retire right now. They have an amazing house that will be paid for by somebody else. Check this out. How do you like this idea? Okay, right? OPM, other people's money. How would you like to own a home, right, and somebody else paid for it, right? Now, I'm not saying be predatory and you're charging them $5,000 in rent, right? What I'm saying is
be profitable.
Be profitable. There's nothing wrong with being profitable. A business in America, right? Capitalism at its best was made to promote competition. And guess what? If he's not being competitive with the rent, someone else is going to go. But also somebody else is going to fill that void. So,
that's what we talk about, economies of scale and balancing of markets and so forth.
Absolutely. So anyway, I get carried away. I like to talk, as you can see, but that's how you can create really generational wealth. And guess what? They're going to own the home as long as they can own the home. Who's to say that they ever sell, right? And this will continue and continue. What happens when the properties are paid off? Now you have no mortgage payment, but you're still taking in money, right? It's a real big advantage for homeowners. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that is evaluating maybe some of your refinance options as well as your selling options, because yes, you can have an ability to cash in on certain proceeds without having a debt or a commitment. However, at that point, now the asset is gone. So those are things to consider as far as sellers, because again, I try to keep it 100 and keep it, make sure that people understand all of their options. So even if you think about selling, if I'm like, bro, like for me right now, even myself as a real estate agent, just to utilize myself as an example, we're military family, so we PCS, about every 3 years or whatever. We probably got a year left, but we've seen some. I mean, we got a deal on the spec home, and it was about it was mid 2020 where things were still a bit active and crazy on the market, but it wasn't like we didn't have competition. We bought a new build home. It was actually on the website. It was Dio Horton, and it was just like, hey, is it still available? He was like, yeah, it's whenever whoever signs the contract first. It's a really
nice home, by the way. It's super nice. I've been in it. This is an amazing home.
It's all right. It's maximizing your spaces, but like we got in like super chill with no competition. But right now, this has been significant appreciation gain. So I think for many folks, as far as homeowners that do think about selling or are considering selling, the big thing for me is thinking about, rent, because we caught a really low interest rate. So our interest rate was like 3.25%, I think. And we're not saying that anymore. Rents in our neighborhood are significantly higher, Andrew, because you were paying the rents. So it could be a great investment to rent, but it's also like, well, it's kind of smaller cash flow vibes because you're still having cash in an asset, but it can still appreciate, and then you can do some pyramiding like Andrew was talking about. That's what we call it on the real estate side, pyramiding, utilizing equity in one home to build and to leverage it to buy another one, because at that point you got collateral. So if you don't pay, the bank gonna take your other home. So let me also emphasize, all these options are also like, whatever asset you're referencing is a part of the collateral. So as you think about that, but that's also why it's easier to me, in my opinion, to get financing, because you're less risky, because it's if you don't pay, they'll just take the house and they'll get all the money that you owe them plus some, maybe.
Plus most likely. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it'd be in your best interest.
Absolutely. And for the veteran homeowner or active duty military, right? We're both in military families, right? I'm the civilian. I'm not gonna
I'm the civilian too. We on the spouse side, but we
but
serve.
oh
USAA
yeah,
says that we serve. I'm serving
oh,
now. I had to go
same
cut
thing.
the yard and stuff. I gotta do all this stuff that I don't normally
No,
do.
hey, I make the dinner. It's fine. I've hands don't have to get dirty. I'm okay. But more time I spend in here, more money gets made. So it's all good. But anyways, here check the little tidbit. So families at PCS, right? Once you have the entitlement to use the VA loan, you can use your VA loan no matter where you go, as long as you have some sort of orders or something that says you will be here. You can use your VA loan an unlimited number of times. You do not have to. You are not limited to the number of times you can use your VA loan. Now, the amount of money you have on your certificate of eligibility, right? That's a different story. Eventually, that will run out. But if you move 7 times, I work with veteran homeowners that have 6 or 7 VA loans, right? And it's because of the opportunity it presents to work across the country, right? And buy a home, right? VA wants you to do that. So do I have veteran homeowners that have a portfolio of homes that they rent out now to, they have the connection to future or current military personnel? Yeah. And right. And when you get
As
into
long as you
VAH,
move in, your
as long
primary residence.
it's your
Primary.
primary residence.
Because
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah.
do mortgage fraud. Because now if you go here and tell these people that you're going to move into this house and then you don't, and then
And
the
you
people come
don't.
knocking at your door calling and they want all their money, that's going to be on you.
Yeah. Don't
Uh,
commit fraud.
don't commit fraud. But if you move into it, your intent is to move into the home as your primary residence. That is the guideline, correct?
That is correct. You have to occupy with the home within 60 and 90 days. I forget if it's 60 or 90, but it's one of those. You have to occupy as a resident. Because if not, now you go to military court, and that's not fun.
So don't do that.
Don't
But
do that.
ultimately, I think for many people understanding, one, you can have multiple VA loans. So many people that I even speak with, because again, we're in the business of moving and selling homes. So even if you come to me and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about buying another home, so we got to sell this one because it's a VA loan. I ain't gonna be trifling and not tell you, but you don't have to sell it. So like, when you bought this home and you can put it on the market for rent and you can cash flow this, and depending on income and qualifications, like in our case, you can purchase another home and not have to. That like you don't have to sell your current one, and that just kind of comes down to debt to income, and they will also they as in lenders can also consider your income generated from a property if you rent it out. So Andrew, can you tell the people a bit more about that? Because I feel like sometimes people think, oh, I can only qualify for this home. I've been in it for a while. I don't really want to sell it, but I want to buy something else. I probably wouldn't qualify because I don't think I make enough. Can you talk about how projected rent can also be used as a qualifier?
Yeah. So everybody knows what an appraisal is. When an appraiser goes out there and appraises the house and says the house is worth X amount of dollars. You also have an appraisal called a 1007, where that appraises the market rents. So when you go to sell the house, or when you are trying to purchase a property, you're going to have a 1007 done, or you can have one done that projects the market rents to be X amount of dollars, right? $2,000. If you are a new renter, okay, or trying to having someone occupy your previous home as a rental, you can either use this 1007 that appraises the market rents, or you can have somebody that will sign a lease, at least a year commitment, first and last month's deposit, security deposit, whatever, the whole nine, and you can get up to 75% of that income. Okay, so if you are able to generate $2,000, right? As far as lending goes, you can use 1,500 of those dollars. So when it goes to qualifying for the next home, right? If you have a mortgage of
$1,000
or $1,000, let's use $1,000, and you lease it for $2,000, you can get 1,500 of those dollars will go towards your qualifying income. They don't even have to be in the house yet. You just have an appraisal, right? A 1007, right? Market rent appraisal that will determine the value. You can still get credit for it, right? Ideally, you have somebody living under that roof, and it can help you qualify, right? So people sometimes on a duplex. I have someone that wants to buy a duplex because they want to put their mother-in-law or whoever, their in-laws, in the other house. Well, just rent it out, right? Rent it out. You can rent it to them, right? And they're helping you qualify for the home. And that's how you can generate income without you needing that income necessarily, right? It's a great advantage.
Right.
Forgive me.
No.
That's my dog.
Oh, somebody rolling up. That's all right. That's why we're going
another
live.
dog.
But you brought up a very valid point, Andrew, and that's just one thing that I think is often on the mind, and I can honestly say I'm starting to see it more and more now, even in our local marketplace. It isn't very popular. It's just like affordability pricing people out of the market. And for some people, I think right now they're like, "Oh, you're a real estate agent, it must be great." It's actually not that great because I work with buyers and sellers. So on one hand, with sellers, it can be very much so. I won't say easy money because we still do the same work, same process. However, it's not as much of a challenge to help the sellers sell the home. At that point, like in this current market, it's a bit more so. How can I get you the best value and the best on your investment? So that's the difference between an agent, because you can still have an agent that can support you through the process. And you sold your home in this current market, but could you have gotten more? Or did you end up, having to provide a certain concession because you didn't sew up that contract from the initial piece of execution? And those are things on the listing side that are helpful. Not just did you sell the home, but what did you sell it for? Because you could sell it for below market value and have a sold home, but that's literally money on the table left as a seller. But for many buyers now. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You brought up something that just triggered in my mind is what you have. What I'm seeing is I've seen it more now in the past 2-3 months, if you will. Since the beginning of this year, and I would like to get your opinion on it. Is I see people listing more like on open door platforms, right? Like where you have a internet agency that will list your property for you. One of them is flat fee something, and they're like, hey, we'll just list your house for a flat fee, $500, $1,000. So I wanted to gauge, because you talked about money on the table for, representing the seller or buyer for that matter. What do you think about this open door? Do you think, or is there anything to prove that borrowers are leaving money on the table by going through one of these discount agencies?
I think it definitely can be, but honestly, I've also worked with clients that were also buying on one side, so I can honestly share. I think it depends, because this is where, like, in some time. But I also feel like you can also think about the betterment of people and, like, having an emotional bond, even though, we're about the capitalism and get your money so you can invest it. But it's also like and institutional investors, or iBuyers, as we will call them, will pretty much make it to where it's almost a renter economy and nobody else can own a home. But at least if you are a current seller, sometimes like Open Door and Zillow then came with the funds like above market value. However, one, you risk not necessarily knowing. So the benefit of putting it on the market is that the market will respond. So we can do this pre-analysis and so forth, and the market can respond more positively, which is when we get into, bidding wars and so forth. So even if, based off of comps, which has happened for me, I want to base the list price off of comps, meaning like these are comparable homes that have sold. However, I want to market it as much as possible to where we run it up to infinity, to whoever wanted this much, even if a lender will only loan this much. And we'll talk about market versus appraised value in a minute. But that will be the goal. However, with like other sources, when you pretty much sell to a cash buyer, that's it. Whatever they told you and whatever they offered and you accepted, that is it. You don't have any opportunity to necessarily consider it versus putting it on the market. So I would say at least being able to compare the two, and at that point you can still kind of leverage a deal. And at that point you can kind of see, what will make the most sense to you. But for the most part, again, it goes back to profits. Everybody trying to make a profit. So if you could potentially earn more from selling your home on the market, it will make sense for a business or an entity to buy it for less. So it's not often that they're going to pay you more. But they actually kind of got into that, and that was the issue with Zillow and Open Door, which is why we're still seeing this now, even in Lake Point.
Yes.
It's a house that's for sale on. Well, I mean, it's public information. It's on Fawn Lily, and it is $511,000, and it is overpriced, and it's been on the market for a while.
It's the longest one.
When things are like literally moving like hotcakes, but it's because like even if it's a seller's market, you got to price. You know, this is overpriced. But I think that may be because Open Door in this case may have purchased a home at a higher value, predicting the future increases, and now that wasn't the case. So they're trying to get as much as they can. But ultimately, if you're a buyer, it can be an opportunity, because I've actually purchased Open Door properties and represented buyers, and it was actually a benefit because we were able to actually come in lower because it wasn't moving, and there was an error. And this is also another thing as far as like just differences between having a person and an individual that you're going to be working with versus a online corporate entity. The square footage was off by 400 square feet, and if you are not a seller, 400 square, that again is money on the table. 400 square feet is a significant difference. So for my buyer. And again, I'm a local agent, so I know homes, and it was also a D.R. Horton home. So I saw a lot of D.R. Horton homes. Depending on the plan, I can tell you the exact amount of square feet it is because I know the plan. But in this case, I seen it, and based off the price that they had it listed at per square footage, it was actually priced pretty high. But that square footage was off by 400 square feet, and I was like, "Hey, I know this plan, and I know this is wrong." And I was able to verify it somewhere, but and they based it off of the tax appraisal, which Bellcat has been incorrect many times. The Bell County appraisal district has been. So I actually have in my realtor bag a laser where I can actually do some estimation and measure square feet, because it's happened to me 2 times actually, to where it's been wrong, and this has been in the last year. But long story short, in that case, my buyer had a benefit. We went in with a strong offer. They thought it was strong, and ultimately the buyer got a larger home because it was like 400 square feet more, and ultimately it ended up appraising more, and then the appraiser did confirm the square footage because that's something that the appraiser considers. So even again, things like that of like having a local person to come in your home and be like, "You're saying this is 2,000 square feet," and I be in 2,000 square feet homes all the time, and this definitely don't feel like 2,000 square feet.
Interesting.
So those are things.
Point.
Or you just knowing the plan. Or even just an agent, because I can be like, I know this plan. I've sold this plan, and I can tell you it's 2,422 square feet. It's the Alcott plan. I can tell you that depending on what it is.
I asked because conversely, you could also have negative equity, right? Right. We haven't seen this since it was every year that goes by, it becomes less common, right? Because the last time something like this happened was, you could argue, it was 2008, 2012. So I've refinanced homes. Now I haven't successfully refinanced them because you have people that bought $1 million homes that are now worth 800 or less. And so now you can't even sell the house to get your money back. Now you're paying on a house that you can't even break even. So you're forced to live in that house. So the opposite is true too.
Right. Actually, a possibility.
Yeah. So if we're getting greedy, right, and blame the mortgage industry, right? If anyone thinks that mortgage lenders are crooks, there was a lot that happened, but mortgage is now the most regulated industry in the country. So, which is why I say, like, to people that are like, "Oh, it's gonna be a crash," and I'd be like, "Well, no, that's why." They'd be like, "Dang!" Right. Like, I literally had clients that was like, they kept getting asked for extra documentation, and one of my clients was like, "Do they want me to give them my leg?" And I said, "I don't think they want your leg, but I mean, we have went through some experiences to where now they gonna be looking. They want to triple verify. You say you getting this money, where you getting it from? Okay, you say you make it on this paycheck stuff. Show me your bank account statement. Let me see the bank account statement. Did a deposit? Oh, checking the same bank account. What is this withdrawal now that we have seen, which actually happened to us, which is a whole thing. Fortunately, it didn't necessarily negatively impact us, but that just to me that just kind of shows in which you don't have buyers that are barely qualifying on a predatory tip like you used to in the past. Because for us, my spouse leases, we do swap a lease because we're like newer cars. And long story short, you can transfer your auto lease to another buyer.
But when you do that, they'll run your credit. So, like for instance, Tesla may run your credit, but they will not open up a new account on your credit report because it kind of stays with the original buyer. But if you don't pay, they're gonna ding both of y'all. However, if everything goes well, they only keep that commitment to whoever originally signed the lease, so it doesn't show up on your credit report. So, to a lending side, that's a significant impact to your debt to income. And we can talk about cars in a minute. If you are on the brinks, or you think about buying a house, and you got a in between gap between buying a car, please buy the house first. Please buy the house first.
Always buy the house first, unless
house first.
Unless your friend say, "Hey Dom, I'm gonna sell my house, or I'm gonna buy a house next week. Sorry, I didn't choose you. Like, hey, you should celebrate by buying a car, but I have a brand new car." Don't do that.
No, do not.
Don't do that.
And talk about why. Talk about why.
Well, yeah, and I'll be very upfront. And something at a company I used to work at, or when I was in the retail side of it, one thing I disagreed with that managers or trainers would say is always lead with, let's see how much house you can buy, right? That's supposed to do this, like give you this uplifting sense. This like, oh my gosh, like how much house I can buy, 2,000, 2,500 square feet. Oh my gosh. But that term never sat well with me because, and I'll touch on that later, but it doesn't sit well with me because now what you're saying is if you got $100, right? When you qualify for a mortgage loan, you make $100, and for most loans you can qualify up to 45% DTI. That means your mortgage payment cannot be more than $45. Okay, and so, but what people don't realize when they get infatuated with how much house you can buy. Of those $100, depending on what state you live, Texas 0% state income tax, so it depends on your state, right? But for most people, you're going to pay at least 20. W2 people, you're going to pay 20-25%. So you don't have 100, you actually have 75. But then you have expenses, you got family, you got your car payment, right? You got so your the amount of dollars you have to go towards the house is actually a lot less. Right, so
and that's the difference between what you can be qualified for, but what can you reasonably afford?
Exactly, and so why buying a car is so bad is because if you have $100 and the most you can spend is 45, right? Then and you buy a car, right? The
car gonna be 20, 30, 40, 50. It might be 60 depending on the person in the car.
But people need to understand that, like, when you buy like a $200,000 house and you buy a $60,000 car, like, you're saying your car is worth 3 times as much. But guess what? Your interest rate's 19%, whatever, for a lot of people, right? If it double digits, you're gonna pay more interest on the car. Someone's gonna fact check me later, and then they're gonna tweet.
And that's okay. We're using these for example. This is why this is the wind down. Okay, this is not for calculated, accurate. Okay, everything here is for general, general references.
Yeah, but and so I saw this crazy thing. So someone can fact check this for me. I would really like to know. Someone said, or there's this article. The average car payment in America. I don't know if this was just for used cars or just for new cars or total. The average is $733.
Damn,
That's
and
insane.
I'm complaining. I'm a little under, and I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. This is robbery. This is this inflationary period.
Like, that's insane to me, right? Like and so you don't buy a car before because $700 added to your DTI. That's an income ratio. That's insane. That makes you not qualify. And here's what everybody needs to know. All right, cut this and YouTube it and put this everywhere. Okay, is you don't mortgage companies prior to closing. Okay, closing occurs when you sign. Okay, the documents get FedExed, they get shipped to the lender. You purchasing a house, you don't have a rescission period. Once you put pen to paper, it's over, right? The thing's yours. Before they do that, this is why they have it. Okay? I'm screaming into the mic because I get so emotional. You can tell there's trauma.
Tell the people.
is mortgage companies will run a supplemental credit report to validate that you haven't added any new credit lines. You'll sign a letter of explanation, an LOE. You'll sign one that says, I've only done this many credit inquiries. If they find one, it will be scrutinized, and it's possible to cancel your loan. It is,
and then if you cancel your loan and based off this contract, you put down this earnest money, I'm like, baby, we passed the deadline. So your money's gone. So the best thing I can do is put a smile onto somebody's face and try to like rationalize something and appeal to the emotional strings to a seller's heart. But contractually and legally, you might have just gave away your earnest money deposit.
It's the car, it's the furniture, it's the.
I just had that happen. As far as furniture. And I was like, bruh, no. Cancel it. Call it right now. Cancel it. And in this case, so for people, and this is both sellers and buyers, but for buyers in general, contracts can go well, but you do not know that you are closing. Even as agents or even as loan officers. People think we really make a lot off commission. After you take away the expenses and all the cuts, it's real modest. However, even then, closing days can be great days where I'd be real happy. But they be don't get happy until you hit the account. So you may think
highest of highs and the lowest of lows.
Highs are highs, lows and the lows. There is no ceiling, but there is no floor. So when there is no floor, there's also a thing. But for many folks, literally in one case, we had some come up with a seller that was selling a property. He owned the property outright. However, he was married after he purchased the property. He ended up getting divorced. So according to the divorce decree, 50% of the proceeds from the property has to be split with his ex-wife, even though she was not his wife when he purchased the property. But now you're getting the legal stuff, and we're not licensed attorneys or anything. Nope. But ultimately, the wife gets 50%. That's what's confirmed. So now the seller don't want to sell the house. So if I'm working with a buyer and literally we open a new line of credit for furniture that's supposed to be delivered on the day of closing, and they was like, we ain't closing actually because the seller said he don't want to close. And now I'm like, and you should seek legal counsel because pretty much as sellers you don't have an out. Like once you sign to sell your house and like the buyer does everything that the contract stipulates, there is no turning back. You cannot just decide, oh, I don't want to sell it anymore. That's not a thing. You're liable to get sued.
People don't realize. Yeah, well, they don't realize we're in the referral business, right? I know tax accountants, I know divorce attorneys. I mean, we know everybody, right? Like we get, like, hey, whatever comes up, right? Like, you know.
And it works both ways. I'm like, y'all divorced? Y'all want to sell your house? I've worked with divorce parties. I work for both of y'all. My goal is to work out for the best benefit of both of y'all. I could be nice to you. You know, I'm cool with the men and the women. You know, it's okay. Because after all, you're another man. I'm like, nah, men can be trash too. I'm with you, girl.
I have seen a divorce decree where one spouse required the part of the divorce. I mean, what the spouse is getting $2,000 in child support, whatever. Is like it was like 3 kids, so it's like $6,000. I mean, whatever. It was insane, and.
Oh, that's why I can't do kids.
She's Jesus. She's telling me. She says, and I wanted every dime and this and that. Is it whatever, right? Her little. She was gloating, and she says, I even made him pay the HOA fee. I made sure that was included. HOA was like $50. Like you're already getting this much money. Like you're making an income on child support more than the average American. And you're like hassling this guy for $50. Like God, like let him have Netflix. You know,
that's all right. Hey, make your decisions well, especially in community property states. But ultimately, I know we're at like 48 minutes now. And I think as far as a couple of things that were like meaningful and mindful throughout today, and we're gonna be splicing some clips and so forth. Thank you all to everybody that did join in. This was the pilot, so this is the first whiskey wind down. But one aspect is thinking about affordability. So just because you can be pre-qualified for a certain amount, that does not mean that is necessarily what you should purchase. And your real estate agent and your mortgage lender are not your financial advisors. So be mindful and think about that as far as just your affordability and planning for the future. Two, we talked about some home equity tips. So if you want to be exposed to more ways in which you can leverage your home equity from a financing tip or from like a pyramiding real estate tip, feel free to reach out to us. I'll also be sure to share Andrew's contact. And ultimately, just think about preparation and timing of the market, because otherwise you can very much so easily be shut out from a market and not benefit from the market because you're so focused on, well, when is the perfect time to buy? Because honestly, as an agent, for us, it feels like a for sure. Again, we understand the market goes up and down. That's why your financial stability matters. So if it's a time where it wouldn't make sense to sell and you would be distressed, you should be in a financial position to where you're like, oh, I'm just not gonna sell it right now. It's like, yeah, that's what I would advise. I would advise you to not sell it right now, because right now you may lose money, but if you can rent it out or you can live in it and do some other arrangements, that can be beneficial to you, and you sell it later. However, just thinking about that in the grand scheme of thing and equity gains and so forth too. So that's helpful. And we started talking about house hacking, which is pretty much.
Oh man!
And I wanted to emphasize that because now we're talking about affordability as a key takeaway from today. To the millennials, we're gonna have to get creative. I ain't gonna say you. We're gonna have to get creative because it's real. And again, we are also millennials. And for us, for me, I feel like I was making a modest income, and when I wanted to buy my first condo, my mortgage payment would have been less than what I was paying in apartment rent. And I went to actually apply, and based off my dang on car, I missed that car though. It was real nice. My debt to income was too high once they factored in my student loans, and I was like, them student loans are ghetto, and I was too young. They shouldn't even gave me that money in the first place. They shouldn't have gave it to me. I don't want to pay it back. But long story short, I didn't qualify, even though I had the credit score. Like, I had the credit score. I've never missed a payment or anything. Credit score, numbers on fleek. However, that DTI was not on fleek because they were like, you only make this much. You factor in your little credit cards you got plus that car. Oh, absolutely denied.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
So for me, it wasn't until I married and then we had both of our incomes and having a military spouse with no student loans and no debt, and then also some assets, that makes a significant difference. So I'm very honest and vulnerable to share like that, as far as I couldn't qualify myself. And I was like, the game is jacked up. I was like, how y'all gonna make me pay more in rent and I never miss a payment, and y'all won't give me a house to pay less? I say, this is trifling. This is trifling, and it ain't right. However, that's the world we live in. So you can either get with it or get lost, and that's the whiskey talking.
That, for all the people that say, like it's corrupt, whatever, like, all right, fine. If it's corrupt, don't play the game, right? But don't get mad when, it doesn't go your way. Because I find myself more and more every day. The term I use now, like, hey, we'll just have to do some creative lending. That's what it is now. It's creative lending. When we spoke last time,
I'm laughing because I'm with you. Oh Lord, if a client say, "Oh, I got creative lending," I'm like, "Oh hell."
I know. Yep.
Oh Lord, let's figure it out. But it's possible.
It is possible. Like, there are crazy, and so here is. I won't talk too much about it. It could be its own segment. It could be its own series at some point. But there's more than just conventional lending out there, right? There's FHA, VA, and conventional USDA. Sure, throw that in there. But there's lending that goes far beyond.
And I don't want to cut you out, but for folks that's on the brinks and you trying to get something, you need to go stay in the country. Go buy you a country house, get that good USDA loan with zero down, and you might get some extra benefits, some down payments, and because it's in the country, you might be able to negotiate some concessions, have the seller pay for a lot of stuff, stay in it for a couple of years, gain some equity, and then you can move into the house that you really want. That's the dream house. It's in the neighborhood with the white picket fence. Go stay in the country. Continue.
The country needs it. The country needs it.
I'm sorry. Continue. There are not just conventional loans. Back to Andrew.
Yeah, there's a ton of it. So when you go to a bank and say, hey, it's a conventional 30-year, that's not just the only program. There's a ton out there. Now, you might, so you're sacrificing interest rate. You might be paying more cost. But, we have a client in common, right? And it's going to take some creative lending, right? And it's not bad. Right, just because you're a millennial making $15 an hour, right? It doesn't. That's not the problem, right? The problem is that we're force fed to believe if you don't fit in this box, you don't qualify. Sorry, that's the problem, right? It's telling people that they can't, right? I won't ever say you can't ever. I always say you need to, like, you're just not ready. Not that you're not ready. I don't put a negative stimulus to it. I said, okay, well, we just gotta get creative, it's just,
You got to
so
focus
when
on
it comes
solutions
to,
or what we can do, which is helpful when you're looking for a lender. Because in some aspects, many people share. It's easier to say no, because those are the easy loans to prepare
yeah,
and to put together in the package. But it's the ones we got to think
I
and be
don't know.
like, damn, your DTI kind of high, your credit score kind of low. You got a couple missed payments. Okay, okay, here's what we can do. But that takes
Oh
some
yeah,
extra
yeah.
energy.
Well, you being commission based, you and I, right? We both know it to a T. I don't get paid on no. You know what I mean? Like, crazy, right? I don't get paid on a no, right? If I'm working at a retail job, someone comes in, they don't find the size that they like, or you don't have a food item that they don't like, and they walk out. Guess what? You still get paid. I don't get paid on a no. So I don't have the luxury of saying no. Now, are there people that have had bankruptcies and foreclosures yesterday? Okay, fine. Yeah, you can wait a little bit, but I don't get to do that, right? How easy would it have been to tell our client no, and that's it. Now what? Right? And but like the fact that I'm willing to go 9 rounds to find anybody anything, right? And then after we go 9 rounds, if we can't do, like, okay,
We might need a break. Let's revisit. Which also happens on the agent side. It's kind of like, especially like right now working with buyers. It's like one of those things to where, like, I think I've been fortunate to where even my most challenging buyers, we have found them a home. There's only been one client in which I have had to convert to renting because we couldn't find them a home. And we did find them a home. The new bill was delayed significantly, and it was a military family. Really? So they were like, we're not about to, like, move into short-term living, and we got 5 kids and 2 dogs, and then move out, and then we don't know when this home is going to be done. And that's the only one in the last 2 years, which is pretty impressive. But again, I think it takes some creative spirit of, like, we can find you something if you're open and willing, and we can get creative. Because if it's kind of like, oh, just get more money, like, that's easy. Like, oh, just get more. Yeah. If you don't have more, then I can't help you. But when you're able to think strategically, be astute, and be reasonable in a sense of, like, thinking about opportunities of where there are gaps of, like, hey, here's an option that doesn't have offers, has everything size-wise, location-wise that you may need or desire, but it might not necessarily have this. But let me tell you, I got some contractors. They can come in and put in some granite. They can come and paint some wall. Do not let the varnish or the vanity of certain things determine aspects in which I was like, oh, you can change that at any point.
Yeah. When it's yours, guess what? When it's yours, you can do
whatever you want. So I think we mutually connect on that tip. Of like, okay, well, let's focus on what we can do, because focus on what we can't do isn't helpful.
I want to take this time being part on. First off, thank you for making this happen. It was incredible. The marketing the things in between the ears, incredible, right? And also for everyone watching, thank you. And Dom is the absolute most astute real estate agent I had the chance to come across. Yeah, and and he's great. And like, think about that statistic, right? Like, the fact that you had one client, right? One story doesn't speak for all. Fine, but the fact that you put it, I was so impressed with what you were doing the first time. That, by the way, Dom was the only one that invited me over. Actually said, like, hey man, like, he invited me to his house, and he said, how can I help you? Who does that? That's crazy, right? And so in a good way, and so but me, of course, right, being the social butterfly that I am, someone invited me over and I went, right? Like, no, there was no vetting, it was just I went over. But Dom is the absolute best, right? You want that guy in your corner, right? You want him in your corner, because even if you don't find the house right now, that's no knock on him or me. Like if I can't get you a loan, like, if I don't answer your calls, whatever, okay, fine. But if I'm going to do everything. Like people think I do just sit in front of a computer, but I'm
You
making
be doing
calls.
stuff on the computer.
Yeah, I want one of these things. I'll share my screen and I'll show you like all the little things that pop up and all the things I have to think about. It's not just I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to brand them. But there's a company that says push button get mortgage. I'm not going to name the company, but people might know that slogan. It's not that easy. It's not that easy, right?
This is not Staples. This is not Staples.
Right, and so back to you is like the amount of work you did, right? That's worth your commission, because what are you willing to pay for security, right? What are you willing to pay to know that you're gonna get a house, whether it takes 10 days or 10 months, like you're gonna get one, right? And if the situation,
Although I'm not trying to be looking for 10 months. Not with my strategies. Oh no, not no 10 months. Oh, what I gotta do? I'm doing something wrong. Jesus, Lord, we gotta get them in the house. I'm just joking.
That's what you're right, and like the amount of work you're willing to put in is incredible. So you got to find someone like Dom. If not Dom himself, don't find someone. If you were looking for someone like Dom, find Dom then, because Dom is Dom, right? So it is ever vastly important to have professionals in your corner advising you. There's nothing wrong with doing it on your own. Hey, you want to fix your own bathroom? Do it up. Fine, be my guest. But if it's to save a buck, well, just know that you're going to get whatever you put out. Now, I get it. There's practice, but there's nothing wrong with finding somebody like Dom or myself that will go to bat for you, do everything in the world that they can to make it happen, and be better for it. Now, if you don't like the service, find the void that I didn't provide or that Dom didn't provide, right? Whatever that thing was. But at the end of the day, my clients can't tell me that. I'll answer. I still have a lot of clients in Texas. I live in California now, right? And so,
Cali vibes.
Oh yeah,
I gotta come visit.
Yeah. Do it. We'll do, and then we'll do a live one here.
Hey, I like it. Tax write-off.
Tax write. Oh, absolutely. All the dinners. People don't realize. Like, have someone in your corner that's willing to go to bat for you. That's hey. Go face to face with the seller and tell him you want to underbid $50,000. How do you think that's going to turn out, right? But having somebody like Dom do it's going to be.
That just means we just need to find the right house. But like, nah, this just listed 8 hours ago. I don't think this is the one to do this on. But the one that's been on the market 60 days, I'm with you. What's the worst they can say? No. And I think that's the benefit of like, if you're open and willing to negotiate with certain sellers, like, what's the worst I can say? No. No, say no. Now don't be ridiculous. Now this house just listed. Don't call me talking about you gonna offer 50,000 under, and it just listed yesterday. But it's been on the market 30, 40 days in the biggest sellers market ever. But do you want to sell your house or not? Because this is what you have. Clearly, you don't have anybody else that wants to buy it right now, and you should have called me to market it in the first place, and then you probably would have been sold.
Should have called you. Well,
but I appreciate that.
There's a thing. Absolutely. And I'll end with this is people don't realize there's a thing called pocket listings, right? For anyone that says it's not about who you know, it's not about what you know, it's who you know, 100% true, right? There's this thing called pocket listings where you know another real estate agent who has a seller who, for one reason or the other, doesn't want to put their house on the MLS.
And some of that's privacy and some of that's cheapness. Excuse me. And so, that's the whiskey talking. I shouldn't have used the word cheapness. Frugality. Frugality is the word.
There you go. You want somebody who's well connected. You are very well connected. You know a lot. You do business. I don't know how far is from the furthest two houses you've sold is what you're covering, like 50, 60 miles maybe, like. It's a lot, and
we got a little hard to Texas and price ranges. So like, I mean, I think it works different ways. Like I've literally sold home. I think the lowest price home I may have sold like $129. Most expensive was like $800,000, $850,000.
There you go.
So I think
and people
being able to do whatever.
Yeah, and people like if you don't connect with somebody, like yes, could you find your own house? Sure, but how much easier could it have been if somebody did? Or what if they have the house that cannot be sold, right? But that's not on the MLS, or someone took it off, but you know about it, right? Maybe it has a. I saw one. I know a story where this guy, a 1-bedroom house had like a 10-car garage. How many 1-bedroom houses do you know have a 10-car garage? Like, what? Right?
So you have a garage with a bedroom. Is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and people think I'm making this. I'm pretty sure I saw on TV, but you're going to have access to those things that people just don't, unless they happen to cross paths with that person and make conversation or overheard it, they're not going to know. That's why you want a real estate agent, even
a broker, and that's in general as far as just like building your team. And I think real estate is just one piece. And even when it comes to attorneys, in some point, in some cases, especially if you're an investor, like having your you got to have your team. So I use myself as an example. I value being an agent because I like being in the weeds and knowing exactly the strategies and what the market's doing. But I also have a broker that can also be like my additional support. I have my tax professional, so when they come to looking at like what's going to be the most beneficial for me in the long run of things, and she may be able to advise like, oh no, don't pay me like that. Oh, and if you're a seller, don't sell in less than 2 years because they're gonna charge you capital gains tax. You're gonna throw away half your money. Stay in at least 2 years. But other ways and in other aspects, I think it's very beneficial to build a team of professionals around you, whether that's legal advice, spiritual advice, emotional advice, financial advice, familial advice. And I think it's very important for so many people that are looking to not only invest in properties, buy homes, maximize home, but just think about a life of freedom, financial freedom in particular. It's super important to have your team. And some of those teams can be like mortgage brokers to where hey, this is where I'm at. So I'm legit, and this is not even a promotion. I'm going to call Andrew and be like, okay, so we got a couple VA loans. We talking about, what's going to be the next move. We're looking about another primary residence, but also want to expand our investment portfolio. We got some equity built up in a few properties. So what are some of our options as far as refinancing and so forth? And for me, I try to do my best, and that's my background as an educator. I want to make sure folks are educated on their options. So ultimately, you can choose whatever you want to do, and that's where again we're in the business of production in the sense that if you don't buy or sell a home, I don't make no money. If you don't acquire a loan or involve a loan, then there's no commission. So I'll still help you, but ultimately, if this is what you decide and you are fully aware of these are your options or these are your limitations, this is what you want to do, well, come on, baby, let's do it, because that's the only way that we are incentivized. And I think as a caveat, I think you mentioned this before, but in my opinion, right now in a strong seller's market, we're seeing a lot more scrutiny for commissions as far as what's done. So now I've done a better job of sharing all the things that come into preparing a home for listing and marketing the property and yielding the phone calls, yielding the questions, scheduling showings, following up with showings, negotiating contracts, and understanding and being able to advise based off of what contracts are presented. And then everything that happens after you actually go on the contract as far as coordinating disclosures, making sure that liability things are protected, negotiating certain repairs, connecting with title, making sure we have a good and clear title, and even just coordinating pieces for possession. And those are things that you don't necessarily see on closing day, but those are all pieces of the process. So when you have someone that's willing and able to educate you as far as your options, I think that's one of the most biggest, even if it's not me. And I'm okay with that. Just make sure you have somebody that will explore your options, because I think it's very easy and it's a cop-out to be oh, well, here's an offer. You should take it.
Yeah. That's all they see, right? That's all they see. And
that's why 3% is a reasonable case. Because some people will be well, it's commission-based, especially for listings now. So this is more of a soapbox moment of the tangible